Hello and welcome to Haverhill Public Schools Education Update. This is our second episode. I'm Superintendent Margaret Murata and I'm joined today by Assistant Superintendent Michael Pifferling.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. How are you?
Excellent, Mike. Doing well here. We've got a few things. Last week we had our premiere episode and it was quite long, but we had a lot of information that we wanted to cover. I think this week we're going to try to keep it a little tighter and a little shorter and sort of parse out the information. Topics today, in addition to you and I updating folks on sort of the gradual return to work and the budget process, are going to include a special education update with the Director of Special Education, Pamela McDonald, an update from Jenny Arndt of Haverhill Promise on the Haverhill Promise Reading Initiative, as well as Heidi Perez, our Supervisor of English Learners, who will talk about how our English Language Learning Department is adapting to remote learning, as well as an update from Mr. Glenn Burns, our principal at Haverhill High School, who will report to us some of the ways that we're looking at honoring tradition for seniors and our graduating class of 2020. So we'll try to keep this relatively short, but informative. So Mike, why don't we start by sharing with people some of the work that we're doing pending the return to work, assuming that our governor does not change the May 18th date, when some of our folks would start to file back in.
Yeah, I think we've got a plan in place, and as you said, pending the governor's holding of the date of May 18th. If that holds, we are planning to bring all of our clerical staff and our administrators back to work next Monday, May 18th. It'll be a limited engagement for 2 weeks. We're going to do a 2-week run on this until we have more information from the government. But right now, we plan on bringing everybody back. Now, it's to be said, our staff has been working all along. They've just been working remotely. So this is an opportunity to get our staff back in the buildings and have some opportunity for them to work at their workstations and get us all of our, work with the public to get them the information that they need. So we're going to bring our staff back 50% in the office and 50% at home or remotely, wherever that may be for them. And it will be, all offices will be covered during our normal operating hours, whether I believe most of our offices operate 8 to 4. So all of our offices will be staffed Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, but our staff will come back half the staff one day, half the staff another day, just to make sure everything's covered. So that's our plan there. That includes our principals, our assistant principals, our curriculum folks, our technology folks, our special education department, our business office, our HR department. Everybody, all of our supporting roles will be back to work on Monday. Of course, teaching and learning will continue to be done remotely. Those staff members will continue to teach remotely, and we will not be bringing them back at this time.
Yeah, and we, talked a lot about this and put a lot of thought into how to roll this back out. And, we decided to come back 50% remote, 50% in person work for 2 weeks before hopefully, potentially ramping back up to full-time in-person work. Just because we weren't sure what we hadn't thought of yet. What problems we might confront, what things that we hope to have in place that wouldn't be in place yet. We thought this would be sort of a soft landing for our staff to return to work, to give us some information and some data to plan forward with. So that's why we planned halftime and a 2-week period and then reassess after 2 weeks. And the other piece of it is clearly our staff, like everyone else, their children aren't in school currently. And that poses a unique problem to returning to work for not just the schools, but for everyone. And we're trying to be sensitive to that and aware of that, while at the same time acknowledging that we have to find a way to make this work. We need to get back to work. We need our students to get back to school, provided that it's safe.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that the public needs to know is that while our offices will be open, they will be mostly by appointment only. So if you have to conduct business with the schools, we are open for your service. However, we do ask that you call ahead or schedule in ahead by email an appointment so that we don't have too many people in our offices at one time. Hopefully, most of our work can continue to happen over phone calls or video chats or through mail and email. But if you do need to drop something off or pick something up, our offices will be open for those purposes, especially around registration, HR personnel, things like that. So we're here. We will be here May 18th, starting May 18th. But please call ahead, make sure that you've got a slot scheduled and reserved for an appointment.
Yep, and yeah, I would agree with that. And just to say, we're attempting to get back to whatever normal is now. Be patient with the staff. I think everyone's a little anxious. People, tensions are high. So just let's all just try to work together to get over to the next hump, whatever that is, whatever is coming next. Just be patient with our staff; they are doing their best, and we will be patient with you.
Yes.
And I would like to talk, Michael, a little bit about budgeting moving forward. I know one of the most or many uncertain things out there is what do things look like fiscally next year? What kind of tax revenues are we going to have? I mean, we were looking potentially just 2 or 3 months ago at really having an influx of money into the district due to the Student Opportunity Act, and really kind of dreaming big around what could happen to support our students, and the rug in many ways has been pulled out from under us, and we don't know what to expect next year in terms of funding. We're looking at a variety of scenarios, and there's a lot of terms being thrown around out there that I don't know that necessarily people that don't sort of work in government and manage budgets would typically know. I mean, some of those are level funding and level service and Chapter 70 and LEA funding. And can you explain to folks what some of those terms mean and how they might impact us in our planning moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, certainly our budget is made up from two major pots of money. One comes from the state. It's called Chapter 70 money, and that's the money that the state gives us primarily or exclusively for education. And that makes up about 60% of our budget funds. So that's kind of an unknown right now as far as how much money we'll get from Chapter 70 next year. Hopefully we'll get some more guidance as we get closer into June. And then the rest of the money is made up from local revenues from the city of Haverhill, tax revenues, excise taxes, whatnot. So restaurant meals tax, those are a lot of things that we're not sure what we're going to get for next year. So we've built probably 3 budgets, or in the process of building 3 budgets. One was 3 months ago when we had a plan that we were going to get all of this Chapter 70 money and our Student Opportunity Act money. We built an outline for a budget, and quickly I think that's been scrapped. So the other 2 budgets that we're looking at right now, one is called level service, and that means how much money would we need to provide the same exact services in school year 2021 as we provided in school year 1920. So it's a level service budget. That's cutting no positions, cutting no programs, having everything really align the way it has been for the previous year. The other type of budget that we'll be presenting or preparing, it will be a level funded budget. And that means we have to work on the same amount of money next year as we had this year. So as you can imagine, we have contractual obligations. We have increased costs every year for all sorts of things, all kinds of contractual obligations that we have, whether they're salary or they're an outside company that we work with. If we are level funded, we're going to need to cut back on some of those things. And those are the things that we need to work with our principals and administrators on to find out what we can cut potentially if we needed to, if we're told that we need to prepare a level funded budget, what we need to cut responsibly that we can live without for a year or 6 months, depending on when the revenues return to where they should be. So a lot of conversations going on with the mayor's office and school committee, budget subcommittee or finance subcommittee, as far as what we have for next year and what we should be planning for.
Right. There are currently a number of unknowns, and we're planning for all those scenarios. And I think regardless of the scenario, whether it's a level service or it's level funded, it's level serviced or level funded for what? because in many ways, if we continue with remote learning, some of the supports that we need, some of the curriculum that we need, some of the supplies that we need are different than if we plan for level service and brick and mortar school, even with a modified schedule. So we've got a variety of scenarios that we need to plan for and we need to think about. So even when we talk about level funded, even though the funding may stay the same, some of the ways it's spent may need to be spent differently, particularly if we hear from the governor that we are having an extended time of remote learning, in which case we really need to get better at this and figure out what are the tools and tricks of the trade that we can use most effectively to educate our students remotely. So that's a big piece of the work as well. And here, as we're sort of rounding towards June, typically we would be winding down our budget season and beginning to vote on a school budget, whereas we've kind of ripped the Band-Aid off and we've really have a lot of options that are unclear at this point, many more so than we would this time of the year.
Yeah, I think this is probably something that, I'm in constant contact with colleagues all over the state regarding the business side of the world. And everybody's kind of in flux right now as far as what kind of budgets they're putting together and what kind of money we're going to get from Chapter 70 and Student Opportunity Act and Corona Cares Act. That there's a lot of potential there, but there's also a lot of scary thoughts that there may not be as much funding as we had hoped for 3 months ago.
Yeah, there's another term that I didn't mention earlier that's being put out there as well, a 1/12 budget. Can you talk a little bit about what a 1/12 budget is or how that works?
Yeah, 1/12 is typically handled within a regional school district, and we are not a regional school district. We're a municipal school district. In a 1/12 budget is when they can't come to terms with their regional district as far as how their budget's going to look for the next year. So they go into the new year with 1/12 of the previous year's budget and try and work through until they can come to a solidified budget. I think that there's a lot of municipalities who are looking to adopt that type of a scenario where we can go into next year, starting July 1st, with 1/12 of our budget from the year prior, the current year that we're in now. And how that looks is it's going to be a little different for us because the majority of our expenditures go out from September through June. That's when our staff is here working and being paid for that. July and August, while we certainly spend money during those time periods, it's less than when we get back to school in September. So that's one of the things that we need to look at is how does a 1/12 budget look for us? Is it 12 equal payments or 12 equal budget buckets? Or is it 10 larger and 2 smaller to equal the same amount of money? So we do need to look at that. And those types of budgets are usually done until we know what type of revenues we're going to be looking at or income that we have for the schools for the future year. And I think if we do it, I think it'll probably be done on the city side too. I think it's, if our budgets are unknown, so aren't the city side budgets.
Excellent, thank you. And I guess, I just want to say, certainly from my perspective, and I know from your perspective as well, regardless of how much money we receive, our objective is the same, and that's to make sure that all of our kids get a really excellent education and that they have what they need socially, emotionally, in terms of food, in terms of support, in terms of rigorous and supportive curriculum, regardless of where they're learning. So I understand that this is sort of a scary time, the potential of budget cuts, and they are just a potential at this point. We have to be responsible and consider every possible scenario in doing this. We are not losing sight of the fact that this is really about people and about children and about learning, and that's what we're going to stay focused on. We're going to stay focused on making sure that our schools are well staffed and that our students are getting what they need every day. And we're going to do our very best to assure that any cuts that may need to be made are made in ways that won't impact children and people. But there is only, in the end, I guess, so much paper or toilet paper that we can cut from the budget, and we're hopeful that it won't move into the place of staff and people, but we're acutely aware of the fact that it could, and we need to plan for that. So that's what we are doing here at central office. Mike, can you think of anything else that we should share with our staff and our families before we move into speaking with some of the department heads?
No, I think we had a pretty long meeting last week, and I think this would be a good time to hear what some of our other colleagues have to say about what's going on in their departments.
Excellent. Well, I thank you for your hard work. You've really been picking up a lot of the pieces in terms of logistics and operations and health related concerns, and pulling together a really strong and impressive team. So I thank you for that and for all that you've done for Haverhill.
Thank you very much. I think I got great leadership to follow, so that's great.
Well, thank you. And let's hear from our staff and see what's going on currently in our schools. Hello, everyone. I'm joined today by Pam McDonald, our Director of Special Education for the City of Haverhill. Pam, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. As you probably know, we're now doing weekly updates of what's going on in Haverhill Public Schools during our remote learning time. And I think one of the things that many families, both families of students with disabilities and just families in general, are curious about what special education might look like via computer. Could you share with us a little bit about what service delivery models look like, and how it's going? What are the sort of struggles and what's going well?
Yep. So I think so for the inclusion students that are mostly in the gen ed classes, their special ed teachers will be joining their Google Classrooms, and they're co-teaching just like they are in in-person schooling. They are doing, our special ed teachers are doing pull-out services and doing small groups via Google Classroom. They are also, modifying and doing accommodations for students via Google Classroom. So that looks similar to in-person, but only via the Google Classroom. Our sub-separates are doing lots of Google Meets, and I had the pleasure over the last few weeks of joining many of those Google Meets, and our kids are learning and interacting via computers. But it's going well. We have a huge amount of our kids participating. We are very happy with the rate of our students getting on. Speech and language, OT related services are also joining sub-separate classes to interact with students. And we're also rolling out teletherapy. Teletherapy took a little bit longer to get off the ground just because there were more regulations for our therapists, but we are rolling that out as appropriate for some students. I think the struggle is that it is hard for some students to attend over the internet because there are so many distractions at home. But we're working really hard with parents, and our parents have been really supportive and helping us to keep our children attending while they're on the Google Meet. So it's been hard work, but it's going well.
So I guess the thing about special education that's so important is that it's individualized to meet the needs of the student. How does that work in remote learning? Do all students get the same accommodations or modifications? Are there other plans for students individually? How's that working?
Yep, so every student, all 1,973 students on IEPs, got a remote learning plan that mirrors what's on their IEP and turned it into a sort of virtual version of it. All parents have stay put rights to whatever was on their IEP. Nothing has changed on their IEP, but this is the way it will be interpreted as a virtual learning plan for them. And as we go along, if we speak to parents, we change things, we add things, we are sending out new remote plans to students as they change. But each student got a remote learning plan that details how their services will be met. And those went out a couple of weeks ago.
So as you mentioned, the remote plans are changing. So I would assume that means IEPs are changing, and so we're holding virtual IEP meetings. Is that correct?
Yep. So any parent that is amenable to a remote meeting, we are holding remote annuals. We started with the annuals first because those are a little bit easier to handle. There's not as many updates and changes. So we've been doing remote meetings for about 3 or 4 weeks now. And as we've gotten good at those, we have transitioned to doing any initial evaluations or reevaluations. That the bulk of the testing has been done, and we can make a determination with the data that we have and the assessments that we have done. We're reaching out to parents on as we go through this, and we're looking at making sure that parents are comfortable. If parents do not want to do a remote meeting, then we'll wait till we can come back, hopefully in the fall, and do it in person. And in the meantime, they have all the same stay put rights to whatever was on their last IEP. So we're working closely with parents to see what works for them and move forward as best we can with determining new services for students.
That's great. Thank you. So that makes a lot of sense for kids who we kind of understood what was going on with them before the shutdown and before the pandemic. And now, obviously, more students, almost a traumatic response to what's going on is almost natural at this point. So, I'm hearing that the incidence of kids' anxiety and fears and concerns is on the rise and universal in many ways. Can you share with our staff and families sort of what your department and is doing to support folks across the school system, not just students in special ed, but students that are having a hard time in general?
Yes. So the school adjustment counselors comes under the special ed office in Haverhill, and the school adjustment counselors have really worked hard to tailored approach to support. We are asking our teachers to be our front line, and if they have concerns about students, they reach out to their administrators. We have a form that they can fill out online where we can then reach out to the families and the students to give them a little extra support. And then from there, it escalates to whatever the family tells us they need. So we do have a system in place to identify students that are struggling more now during this time away from school and without the structure and support of their trusted teachers and friends and all of that. So there's a system in place, and it's working really well, and we've identified a ton of students that just need a little extra support, and that's going really well. And it's allowed us to, there were students that we never thought, before much about struggling with anxiety and depression that are starting to pop up. So we're able to get them really early and support them in ways that, without this system, we wouldn't be able to.
So if a parent has a concern and maybe it hasn't become apparent to the teacher yet, so it's not on our radar, but a parent sees something happening at home and they're concerned, what should they do?
So there's a couple things they can do. They can reach out to their teacher. They can also reach out to their principal. And we also have listed, there's a special ed website where I posted all of the school adjustment counselors for each building. So they can reach out to their school adjustment counselor.
Great. And that website's open to all folks, not just people whose students have IEPs?
Yep.
Great.
Yep. If you go to the special ed, it is through our special ed page through Haverhill Public Schools, but if you click, the link is there and anyone can access it.
Wonderful. Is there anything else you think it's important for folks to know? I'm sure we'll have you back on again as we plan and move forward for summer and fall, but any other highlights we should be aware of?
Yeah, I've just gotten a lot of questions. Most of the questions I've gotten from families is about our students turning 3, and then they would transition over to special ed services from early intervention. We are working very closely with early intervention to share data and assessments and information, and we're taking those students one at a time as they turn 3 to make sure that we can support them and that we can develop plans for them so that they're not left without any services. So the Moody Preschool is working really hard at that. And if you have a child that's turning 3 and you haven't heard from them, reach out, because they are trying to, on a case-by-case basis, make services and supports and resources available to those families.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you for sharing that with us, Pam. That's so important. We don't want to see our youngest, most vulnerable kids without services. So that's excellent to know that we're still working on that. Well, I appreciate your time, and I thank you for joining us today. And I'm sure we'll have you back, as I mentioned.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now being joined by Jenny Arndt of Haverhill Promise. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your work and your organization.
Sure. So for those who don't know, Haverhill Promise is our city's campaign for grade level literacy. So we're trying to get every child in the city reading at grade level by the end of third grade. And we're not our own standalone nonprofit or anything like that. We're a partnership of many groups in the city, including Haverhill Public Schools, the Haverhill Public Library, doctors, nurses, other community members who want to be involved in this work.
Oh, that's really exciting. And I know you've been doing some great work during the shutdown, really working on getting students to read every day, which we know is really important to keep kids thinking and keep their brains going and keep learning. Tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the main pieces of this work that's going on across the country and in various communities is just encouraging students to be reading for 20 minutes every day. And that especially during times when school is not in session and, and they don't have a teacher encouraging them to sit down and work on their reading. So we created a citywide reading challenge that started as soon as the announcement came that schools would be closed, where we've just been encouraging children in the city to be reading for 20 minutes every day. And I've been getting a lot of questions lately, do your kids have to be independent readers? And I'm like, oh no, this work goes as far as we want babies and toddlers sitting with their parents and being read to for 20 minutes a day, because all of that is just great for their reading development in the future and to get them ready for school. So
Great. Great. And tell me a little bit more about the challenge part of the challenge. I mean, I think we want to get everyone reading 20 minutes a day, but sometimes it can be hard and kids need a little bit of encouragement or some sort of an incentive to get moving. And I'm pretty sure the parents are getting tired of being the ones egging their kids on. So tell us a little bit about how Haverhill Promise is trying to do that.
I'm getting tired of it too, with my own child. So what we've been doing is we've been incentivizing the challenge. So every week we're drawing 5 names at random, participants in the challenge, to receive a $25 gift card. And the students get to pick the gift card. It's been fun to see where students like to go out to eat in the city. Some are picking Barnes and Noble so they can get more books, which is kind of nice to see. And then we're hoping to recognize all the students who have participated in the challenge in some way at the end. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that this is still going on. It started as a 2-week challenge, but we decided to just continue it up until school gets out. So it's not too late to jump in. People can go to haverhillpromise.com for all the details and check out our Facebook page as well. We have a Facebook event called Citywide Reading Challenge. And essentially just read for 20 minutes a day at the end of the week, report it in a Google form, and you'll be entered to win a gift card.
That's awesome. So it's not week by week. I'm not behind if I haven't started yet. I can jump right in, and it doesn't matter if I'm 3 or I'm 18. I can join the effort and be rewarded for my hard work. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Excellent. Well, one of the things I know that Haverhill Promise has been working on even before the pandemic is making sure that we get books in the hands of children. And I think that's probably, well, I know it's even harder now that schools and school libraries and the public libraries are closed. So some folks might not have access to a lot of books in their homes. Can you talk a little bit about some of the ways that Haverhill Promise has been working to get books to folks and hopes to in the future continue to do that?
Sure, yeah. Book deserts are something that we see in a lot of communities where we have a lot of concentration of economically disadvantaged families who maybe don't have transportation to be able to get to the library. So this is a problem regardless of whether there's a pandemic or not, but especially now where we have families who have limited income streams. If you're worried about getting food on the table, you may not be worried about buying books for your kids. And especially here in Haverhill, where one of our most valuable assets, the library, is closed, and we don't know when they're going to be able to start circulating their collection again. This has become a priority that's kind of definitely moved up my list to be one of the top priorities, is making sure that families have all the books they need, especially as we head into the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been working with a few different organizations, Community Action, the Haverhill YMCA, who have been using some donations that have come in. They've been bagging up books and bringing those to families when they're delivering food. But we're talking about some really fun ideas. We may try to revamp some kind of a bookmobile for the summer that would go around the neighborhoods and deliver books. And we're also working on how we can create kind of an ecosystem for book recycling in the city. So families that are done with books, I know in my household, my daughter goes through these graphic novels so fast and she doesn't want to read them again. So they're pretty much brand new sitting on the shelf. And, you know, we're trying to develop a way for people to get those books off of their shelves and back out into the community so that other children can enjoy them. So lots of ideas going around, but we definitely want to start identifying which families are in need of books, and don't be shy. If your child has gone through all the books at home and is in need of some more physical books in their hands, we want to know so that we can reach out and get some books out to you.
And how would folks let you know that, Jenny, if they either, I guess, have books, if they're like you and have a shelf full of books that their kids have already read, or if they need books, or maybe they need books and they have books, right? What's the method for people to do that?
Yeah, so anyone can reach out at any time to our email address. It's just team, TEAM, at haverhillpromise.com. And we're also going to be adding some links to our website where you can just real quick fill out a simple form and let us know if you're looking to donate or if you're looking for some specific books for your home.
That's great, Jenny. I thank you so much for this work and for joining us today. And it sounds like we're going to have you back as you make some plans for the summer to share with people how this is going and what your next steps are.
That would be great. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi, I'm joined by Heidi Perez, our English language supervisor, who works to support our English language learners across the district and our teachers and families as well. Heidi, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Can you share with us a little bit about how remote learning has changed the already very difficult work of supporting students in growing academically that have limited English language proficiency?
Sure, I'd be happy to. The process of language development is highly interactive and requires participation in some kind of live setting where you can practice your language. In addition to the fact that especially our younger grade level ESL students, they need support from their families. So some of those families are also learning the language of technology at the same time. So it's been many factors to support this work. We do have bilingual parent liaisons that have partnered with our teaching staff to support parents and kids logging on and figuring out how to participate in a virtual environment. The ESL teachers are both partnering with their content or grade level teachers like they typically would in a face-to-face setting, but doing that a little bit stronger, and some of them are co-writing some lessons together. They're co-teachers in their Google Classrooms, and they might pull some of the ESL learners aside for additional language support.
How does the participation look like for our English language learners? Are kids tuning in and participating in classrooms, or are they tuning out?
I'm happy to support. We're in the 90s, 90 participation rate percentile. So it's it took a little bit longer to get us all here and get the families what they need with the language support. Like I said, the language of technology and the language of their classroom. It was a double learning experience for many of our families.
But 90% of our families are able to, or students are able to routinely tune in and join lessons and participate?
Yes. And to the credit of many of our teachers, there is not a beginner curriculum in the world for teaching ESL remotely. And so our teachers have done a fantastic job of finding inroads, making learning engaging, language rich. We have some teachers that have their Google Classroom, they decide on a movie that's appropriate that they watch together off of the Google Classroom, and then use that to do language lessons within the Google Classroom environment. We have some of our teachers doing book clubs. I know some of our kindergarten and first grade teachers have adopted the policy where kids bring their stuffed animals to their Google Classroom so that they have someone to interact with, because we need them to practice language. So the teachers meet with me weekly on their own time, because they're still participating in their school meetings, where we have successful lesson idea swaps, and they share lessons or ideas that have worked for them. And then we share a really fantastic resource now among our team of things that have worked lessons, so that we don't have our teachers working in isolation and recreating the wheel. And so to their credit, they're doing both things. They're participating with their schools and their teachers and their principals and all of those initiatives. And then they work together on the side and support one another to develop lessons that make children want to log on and practice their language. So that's important in a remote environment.
It's really important, and that's great to hear that the teachers are kind of working together to figure it out, because it is just a very different world than we were in just a few months ago, and there are so many questions, and we can all learn from each other. So it's great that they're doing that.
Great.
How about technology issues or concerns, or how are we doing with that with families? I know when there's a language barrier, as you mentioned to begin with, and then there are some technology issues that can be exacerbated. How's that working?
Well, it's there's almost a triangle of support. You have your teachers that will bring the issue a family might be having to our bilingual parent liaisons, and they will then connect with the technology. They either can help them on their own, or get support from technology. So that is a combined effort. It is a little time consuming and challenging, and some of our families need the walking through the step by step, but it is definitely getting done. And many of our students that were having trouble at the beginning are all actively participating. So I credit all that relationship between those departments to get this done.
Yeah, I think that's probably an example of one of the places that we've had to learn and grow. And I know from talking to you, our IT director, and you, that we had a system, but it was a little inefficient. There was nobody that was Spanish speaking in the IT department. So while we have a system where families can call in and get IT support, we didn't have anybody Spanish speaking there. And previously we didn't necessarily need that because it was only teachers. So I think that's one place that we've made some changes. And even though there's a hiring freeze on, we are posting for a bilingual tech person to do more support to community members and families, so that everybody can have direct access to that. So
Right.
People should look forward to a bilingual person in our tech department soon. And if you are a bilingual techie out there, please look for the posting as we are hiring, and would love to hire somebody from Haverhill.
Yes. The technology department also, from our asking for this, I appreciate it. They're so busy. But a lot of our support videos on their website are fantastic and will help you with just about anything. But they also are very language heavy. And so they've been working on creating some tutorials that are more visual and less reliant on language, so that families can try to problem solve before they reach out for help. And those have been very successful too. So we appreciate them recreating some of their resources to be able to support all of our families.
That's great, Heidi. Anything else you'd like to share with us before we sign off this afternoon?
I don't think so. I think we've covered it all. But I'm happy to come back anytime you would like.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. I'm sure we'll be having you back to talk about plans for summer and fall, as those are all questions to all of us at this point.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
All righty. Thank you. I'm now being joined by Stephen Burns, principal of Haverhill High School. Mr. Burns is going to be a regular contributor to our program, as so many of our students are at Haverhill High, and we have so much going on there, and it's such a important time in students' lives that we're really working to make sure that they have access to many of the traditions and routines of high school in a different way, given that we are now in a world of remote learning, and we want to keep you posted about that routinely. So, Mr. Burns, please tell us what's going on this week at Haverhill High, and fill us in on some more of your planning about senior activities.
So over the past few weeks, we've really been planning, as we spoke about last time. We had pushed off kind of as long as we could this idea that we would be able to plan on holding this a little bit later, and maybe in June or July. And about 4 weeks ago, we really started the plan as if we knew that that wouldn't be a possibility, and how do we capture this moment or these moments for all of our kids.
Mm-hmm.
So we released this weekend, in conjunction with our student government, who does the planning for many of the student events, a packet that explains all of the upcoming events, from events such as family trivia night, which I believe is on the 21st. So we're looking for families to sign up using that link, to the graduation ceremony. So the key thing that we have to get done this week is connect with all of our Haverhill families and give them a time slot for their graduation. And a few of the things that the kids wanted to make sure that would be happening here during their graduation ceremony. Well, there was a few key things, but one is, there's still a tent that will be here, and there is still a stage. So the kids will walk across stage, and there'll be a tent. And that day, there will also be a few other minor things, but that kind of round out the ceremony, such as a recreation of the senior board that's in the mall, the class of 2020 board, so that as they walk down the red carpet on their way to the where they'll take their place to walk across the stage, they'll be able to sign their name for the class of 2020. That board will then be put into school at some point, and will be removed around next Thanksgiving, as it was this year.
Great. So we're going to have, it sounds like a social distanced graduation.
Correct.
But in-person graduation, where students will wear a cap and gown and be acknowledged by the staff at Haverhill High School in front of a small group of family members.
So on the 26th, so our staff is large, so that wouldn't meet the social distancing guidelines. But on the 26th, which is the Tuesday after the holiday, the staff will line the driveway appropriately spaced as families drive in to pick up their cap and gown, and staff will be in their cap and gowns cheering on the kids, so that they can support them. And typically that would be done during chapel, but it would be just the opposite. Staff would line the hallways of Haverhill High School, and the seniors would take their last walk down the hallways and be cheered on while they're in their cap and gown. This year it's kind of flipped. The teachers will be in their cap and gown cheering on the kids as they go to pick up their cap and gown in the pool building parking lot. And at that time, we've asked all families to remain in their car. We will have stopped them at the guard shack. They've given us their name, and we'll have their package brought out right to their car from the pool building. And inside that will be their cap and gown, all their regalia, and their commencement booklet.
Excellent. Well, we'll pray for good weather on that day for sure.
I hope.
Well, that's really exciting, and I'm really pleased that families will still get an opportunity to see their student receive their diploma from its high school administration. Um, and I think we've had a conversation about we don't know what's going to happen next. So if we are lucky enough that gatherings and crowds are allowed later in the summer, we're open to and looking at a potential more typical graduation ceremony.
Yeah, absolutely. So in working with student government, that was put out, and yours, and in the superintendent's office, we've made sure that that's still on the table for a date even in August. The point of the June 5th one was we knew we had a series of kids that were going to be going off. There was a survey taken earlier, going off into the military or to other places. There was also a survey conducted that said at any given time in July, more than 17% of our seniors would be out of the area. So knowing all of that, we wanted to make sure we're able to capture this moment, allow the families to see them, and be able to put together a video and have a keepsake for all the families of the class together. After this June, it seems that it would be very difficult to get everybody in one place at one time. But for those families that can make it, we will look to hold that traditional graduation ceremony. It would be great if it could be in July or August, when if they lifted the guidelines. And if not, we're planning as far out as June 3rd, which would be the day before the 2021 graduation. And it would be the class of 2020 night. And that would include graduation, a bonfire, a cookout, and a variety of other events for the class of 2020 and their families.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And just one more thing. I heard you mention chapel in there, and I'm sure people are curious what chapel looks like this year. You want to talk a little bit about that for us?
So that's something that we're still working out because of that would be 2020 school year, because there's a lot of ceremony in there, and the class officers for the junior class haven't been nominated yet.
Okay.
So one of the big pieces of that ceremony is the senior class turns over, gives over their governance to the junior class officers for the following year. And since that hasn't been done, we'll be looking to hold off on that ceremony at this time. The piece that we are adding, though, is the staff being in their cap and gowns to recognize the kids as they come back onto campus for their cap and gowns.
And then also, I think that there's a plan for scholarship night for students.
There is a plan. So what we're working on right now is actually getting the letters prepared, and they will be sent to the child's home. There'll be directions in that envelope, as well as a sealed envelope with all of the scholarships that child will be receiving. On the night of Stars, they will be recognized by Miss Jamie Dion, and they will then get to open up their envelope, read off their scholarships that they're getting, and then say a few words. So it'll be almost like an NFL draft night style thing, where the kids, they know they're getting something, they don't really know what they're getting. So we're hoping to be able to capture the look on their face and capture the emotion of the moment.
That's wonderful. And I know there's a number of other things that are planned at the high school. They were pretty exciting. I think, given our circumstances, I will post those on the district website. I know you've sent them out to families at the high school, but we'll get them posted for community members to be able to see how we're handling tradition this year, as I know that's very important in Haverhill. Anything else that you'd like to share with us?
I guess in the immediacy, so the Eagle Tribune and the Haverhill Gazette are doing a spread on the class of 2020, which will include all of the seniors' pictures, as well as a few other senior activities. If you would like to send a shout out to put a shout out in the paper for anybody in the class of 2020 that you know, or you just want to congratulate your Hillies, you can contact Dave Schultz at the Eagle Tribune, and and he'll help you go down that path to put a nice little ad in there to congratulate our Hillies.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for joining us today. And I will probably see you again next week.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, take care. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Haverhill Education Update. We thank you for joining us today. I hope that this has been helpful to you and provides you insights into what we're doing and thinking here at the school system. Even though our buildings are closed, we are very actively working on how to educate our students and what this looks like moving forward. I'm certainly interested in your questions and concerns and addressing those in this update. So if you would like to send an email to superintendent@haverhill-ps.org, we will do our best to answer those questions in our next update. I thank you all and stay well.